So Dave, can you describe yourself in 3 words?
Relentless and reliable. You can tell who wrote the company values, can't you? But also I try to be kind.
Great. So I think everybody would want to know, do you ever get Monday morning blues?
I think everybody does. I think the number one thing that you manage in your life is your own mindset. That's the one thing you're in charge of that nobody else can help you with. And you have to have a way to focus and motivate yourself. So for me, I exercise every morning. So I take my dog out for a walk at 6 o'clock every single morning. And I just think about what I'm doing, and I get back, and then I start the day. And if you ever see me in a bad mood, it's because I didn't get time to walk the dog.
So who is your biggest inspiration?
I think it's a really interesting question. I think that on a personal level, it's probably my dad. I think we all are very centred in the family values we grow up in. I think on a professional level, I've been very influenced by our former chairman, Sir David Varney, who is an example of somebody who achieved incredible things for the business world and society in his career, but was an incredibly humble and self-effacing person. So I've learnt a lot from him, a lot.
So what has been the biggest accomplishment that has shaped your career?
I think starting Packt. So my career history is my second publishing company I started, and the first publishing company, Rocks, is now owned by Wiley, and it was also a press. And when those companies went insolvent in 2003, I had 4 young children and nothing at all. I had to sell my house to start Packt. And I think doing this second time around in difficult circumstances in a market for book publishing which was relatively mature, without external capital in a difficult kind of post-dot-com crash time of the world, keeping going through that, I think that was probably the hardest thing I've done.
So would you say that's also the biggest risk you've taken in your career?
Yeah, so at the time when we started Packt, I'd sold my house and put all the money I'd ever earned into starting Packt. And the Christmas time in 2005, I was paying money into the company to pay everybody's wages. And then we actually had a really good selling book on a topic called Plone, which probably no one's heard of. It's a content management system. Doug will remember it. And at that point in time, it suddenly started to sell, and then I knew that the business plan would work. But up to that point, it was a bit like Roadrunner in the cartoons, running over the cliff and keeping going but with no ground to stand on. So at that moment in time the ground appeared, and that was a relief. It was hard.
So looking back, what career advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think that all the way through my career, I've underestimated the power of good teams. So I think when you're a young person starting your career, like a lot of the people in Packt, you think that work is like homework. It's like it has to be all your work, and you have to hand it in to the teacher, and then it's going to be marked as to whether you're any good. But in a business sense, that's not the business. Customers and the company don't care whether this is all your work. What matters is that it's successful.
Right.
So where you're young and you get confused between work being a test of you rather than work being creating productive and successful products and services for customers, no matter who did the work, you start to think about how good can the team be rather than work being a test of you. I think we all suffer from that. When you start off in your career, you think this is all about me, I have to succeed, I'm really worried about failure. But as I've got older, I realised that it's about how the team succeeds together, and no one person is the answer to every problem.
So, how do you keep your team motivated?
Well, it's probably a really good question to ask them, but I think I think wanting to never stop. One of the ways I think about the world is that companies grow because people grow, and I think there's a kind of fallacy in life to think we all think that what will make us happy is a low rate of change, being in our comfort zone, doing what we already know how to do. But actually, in my experience of human life, that does not, you think that's going to make you happy, but it doesn't make you happy, it just makes you bored. And being continually pushed out of your comfort zone to do more things, more quickly, bigger things and new things, and stretching yourself is a source of great satisfaction. But doesn't always come from inside us. Sometimes we need to be pushed to do that because it's not a natural human behaviour, isn't it? So actually I see a big part of working in a high growth company and a high performing team, that ultimately some of that relentless drive has to come from me. So I think if you ask members of the top team what I bring to the team, because they're all really highly skilled people, can do fantastic things, I see the ultimate contribution that I make is just that constant push to grow, to change, to do more and better things all the time. And that in itself creates motivation, because you think, I can do more, I should do more, tomorrow will be different than you.
Right. So seeing as you're saying the change is not a national thing for people, how do you approach it? How do you motivate yourself to accept change?
Yeah, I think that I might be quite a bit of a weirdo in the sense that I think I do love change. So I recognise that all of us in society have different personal motivations. I'm just very honest and say I just love new stuff. I have a really low boredom threshold. So new technology, new ways of doing things, new difficult experiences, absolutely love that. It just, perhaps there'll be some stage in my life where I don't get as excited about that. But I do really love that, and I recognise that. I think the hard part about that is that being successful sometimes is not changing everything but focusing on things that you've already done. So there is a balance to be struck by between the need to constantly change and innovate and the need to grow in accomplishment and achievement in the chosen focus that you currently have. I think getting that balance right is really important. I absolutely know that I will always shake things up rather than let them continue. But that's why in the team that we are in Packt, and some of the people around me now are less driven by newness and change exclusively, but are better and more focused on consolidation and execution and sustaining and growing and the organic incremental improvement of what's around. And I think that's an example of trying to get myself and the company into a situation where our mindsets and skill sets of the people that I'm in the team with are complementary. Does that make sense?
Yes. So, talking about Packt, what has been your greatest challenge in that?
I think the greatest challenge at Packt is the fact that we are entering, and we've grown up in a big global market for both publishing and now developer subscription platforms, with really big global competitors who are very well funded by third-party investors. And having a strategy which allows us to grow and be a player in that while retaining our business model of being organically self-funded and our kind of tight-knit team is a challenge almost every day. And it's a challenge to maintain our unique focus because the world doesn't need a second Pluralsight or a second O'Reilly. It needs Packt to be Packt, but to do it well. And keeping the focus on what we do and what we bring to customers, which is different, and doing it in a different way, is constantly a challenge. So it's sometimes, it appears easier in life to say, company X or person X has been successful, so we'll be successful by just copying them. And there's only ever one space for one person in the world, isn't there? So it would be really weird if someone walked through the door of this office and there was another Michelle, wouldn't it? It would be really confusing for me and for you. The world doesn't need two Michelles, we've got one, and then we just need other people that are different.
What are the 3 characteristics you believe every leader should possess?
I mean, first one is relentless drive. You have to keep pushing the organisation, yourself and everything forward. I think the second one, you have to be very resilient. So your question about what do you do on a Monday morning, that's kind of my problem, isn't it? People don't expect you to turn up to work as the leader and make your problem their problem, right? So you have to be incredibly resilient. There are lots of ups and downs. There's a lot of challenge. You have to be tough and resilient and keep going. As Churchill said, keep buggering on, as he said at the hardest point of World War II. Just keep going. Just keep going. I think the third thing is that you do need to be sympathetic and kind as a human. Now, you can run organisations successfully to some degree as a kind of sociopathic lunatic with no regard for society or for individuals. But those are not my values. So I think if people are going to believe that you have their personal interests at heart, unless your organisation structure is completely coercive or you're just bribing people to do things, people are going to do things because they believe in it. They have to believe that you have their interests at heart in as much as you can, and that you're going to treat them with respect and kindness.
Oh, that's really nice. I think a lot of that has driven down from you.
Well, that's nice of you to say that.
Do you think this would be, the characteristics that you described would be different for somebody going into leadership position for the first time? Or is there some special advice that you can give new leaders?
I think that those things about drive, resilience and kindness are probably always true. I think being really open and learning all the time and not thinking that you're the leader because you have all the answers is a mistake that a lot of junior managers make. I think the kindness thing manifests itself in different ways. I mean, one of our original values at Packt was about meritocracy, which says that you should treat all people with respect and kindness, and we're not interested in corporate hierarchy, and we're not interested in status. And I think the problem is that some people in their first step into management start to love the idea of being a manager, and that's terrible. It's just against my values. I find it a personal affront, and you should be the most humble person, and your success should be completely down to your team. It's not about you.
So what do you value most about the culture and vision at Packt?
I really like the fact that people care about each other. You have to enjoy coming to work, don't you? It's nice to see you when you come to Birmingham. It's really nice to see people that you've been through experiences with, you achieve things with, and I think that's a really great feeling. I think there's quite a lot of people who are here. Quite a few people, no one has to be here, and I think ultimately you have to feel to be valued and feel part of something that you think is worth doing.
Right.
I think that's really, really important. I think the second thing that I really like is the kind of clarity around performance, and not in a brutal way, but in a simple, clear-cut way. So if you're in a team and you think you're working hard and you're delivering value, actually if you see people around the organisation that you don't think are delivering value and working hard, it isn't just a problem for the company, I think it's a problem for all of us, which is it's impossible to have that satisfaction of teamwork where you feel that other people are not playing by the same values and rules as you. So having a clear commitment to performance means that you're not constantly looking around thinking, why am I doing this? Because someone else, somewhere else in the organisation, doesn't feel as strongly as me, doesn't work as hard as me, doesn't push as hard as me. But I think when everyone does, you get this great sense of teamwork and satisfaction, doesn't it? But the company has to have a commitment to those values. Otherwise, there's no shared experience at the heart of it, is there?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I like what you said. Nobody has to be here.
Nobody has to be here. We all choose, me included, we all choose to be here, don't we?
Right. I like that. What is the most important leadership lesson you've learned, and how was it valuable?
I think that the common theme that I've learned throughout my career, and this again circles back to a real learning from Sir David Barney, is that your job is to be both challenging and supportive at the same time. And that's a very skillful thing, because it's easy in life actually to be one or the other, isn't it? So it's really easy to be challenging all the time and nobody will want to work with you. You're just constantly beating people up, telling them they're rubbish. It's just not, there's no commitment to the person or learning and so on. And that's an extreme kind of almost sort of borderline sort of bullying environment, isn't it? It's just very brutal. And then over here you've got a completely supportive. So you end up being like a social worker, or you expect your mum to be supportive, don't you? So, in software there's a thing called the mum test. Have you heard of this? Where if you ask your mum, like, whether your software product's going to be successful, that's not a good test, is it? She goes, oh, I really like your homework, I love the painting you did at school, isn't it? The job of a parent is not to be a performance manager, it's just to love everything you do, isn't it? So the problem is that if you're at either of those extremes, there's no performance, there's no growth, there's no learning. But they're both really important values, and the skill is, how do you hold these two ideas together all the time, constantly? So being both challenging and setting people difficult goals, pushing them to achieve them, getting them out of their comfort zone. But also being very supportive and understanding about their personal stretch to get there, helping them to get there, providing coaching and training. And then also understanding that when people stretch and it doesn't work out, that you have an honest conversation about why it doesn't work out, and then are supportive about change as a result of that. I think doing those two things together is the heart of good leadership and management. But it's so tempting just to do one or the other, isn't it? Does that make sense? Being nice to everybody is not going to work. Being horrible to everybody isn't going to work. You've got to be skillful about the two together.
Being in the position that you currently hold, how do you balance your personal and professional life?
Do you know, the honest answer is not very well right now. So I recognise life kind of goes in phases, doesn't it? And there is a phase where you can call it kind of like a wartime and a peacetime phase. And I think currently, wartime's not a good word, but I think we're in a phase now where we're kind of pushing to the next level, and that is about us moving from being a content and publishing company to a platform and services company. And that's a super hard transition to make. Our chairman in our board meeting the other day described it as being you're on one surfboard on a wave, and then you get on the next surfboard while you're currently on the wave. I mean, it's such the image being what a crazy thing to try to do. That's never going to work, is it? But trying to shift your business model and culture as you're growing as an organisation is a really demanding thing to do. So this is I feel this kind of 3 to 5 year period is a very intense period where we're growing the in-house software development capabilities, trying to build out a corporate and B2B platform and get our subscription product working and grow our brand reputation at the same time. And these are all big challenges, and so it feels like a very demanding period. So I'm very drawn into that. I think the other so that's one thing. I think we are in a kind of very demanding period. I think the second thing is that I think you have to ask yourself, what is the definition of relaxing? So my definition of relaxing is not always stopping. My definition of relaxing is doing something different to what you do in what you call your day job. Does that make sense? So I do a lot of work outside Packt currently with the local government of the sort of region of the West Midlands, probably way too much actually. But because it's a different sort of work, it means you leave one kind of work behind and move to a different kind of work. And actually that's not quite the same as switching off, but sometimes having two different things going on can be really good. That might be a big project at home, or an all-consuming hobby, or it might be doing something like getting married. But you can be really busy in work and busy in your personal life. And you can be a really busy person, but relax because you're getting this change. So I think change is a really, really good thing. The other secret I've got to relaxing is to, I just really like a good long walk. So I find it really hard to sit around. So if I'm going to go somewhere, I like to walk up a mountain or actually be doing something. And I do think that the process of walking or running or cycling or skiing just gets your body moving and makes your mindset really positive. And because you're thinking about the thing that you're doing, you're then not thinking about work, isn't it? And it's a real problem, isn't it? Because we've all got a smartphone, so you could, in theory, work 24 hours a day, couldn't you? Yeah.
So, do you switch off after work?
I'm not very good at it now. I tend to work all the time, and especially since Rachel's in Westminster in the week, and all my children have now left home. Much as I love my dog, there's only a certain amount of conversation you can have with a dog, isn't there? So I'm not very good at doing it, I'll be honest with you, but I need to get better at doing it.
So what is one piece of technology that you can't live?
Do you know, I was thinking about this because it's tempting to talk about modern technology, isn't it? But actually, one of the things I think technology you take for granted is actually great technology, and good technology you don't think about, do you? So I'm a real fan of hot water. I'm a real fan of toilets. I'm a real fan of electricity, right? But you laugh. But, you know, when we moved into our new house in January, it was quite an old house, and it was a really cold winter. And I woke up one morning at 5 o'clock and the heating had broken down, and there was literally ice on the inside of my bedroom window. And I was there thinking, wow, I love the technology of heating that doesn't break down, isn't it? You know? So I think it's easy to take for granted technology that disappears. And I think we're at the stage where digital technology in sort of 50 or 100 years' time, we will think about it the way we do about electricity and toilets. We'll only notice it when it's not there. Yeah, and so I love the way, as a human, you build on these things and keep moving on, don't you?
If you had to do it all over again, would you change anything?
I would stop thinking that. I think in the early stage of my career, I thought, like I said, that this was a test of me.
Right.
And I think we all think that when we're young. So I would have tried to get myself in teams of people that I can learn off and just stop worrying so much. I think living through, as a business person, through the dot-com crash was really difficult. And so what would I do differently? I probably would be, although I'm very keen on growth now, and Packt grows about 25 to 30% a year. The company I ran before used to grow 100% a year, and it was insane. And there was no way it wasn't going to end up crashing. And I was just young and too impatient. So what you see now is someone that's much more patient and relaxed than I was when I was in my 20s and 30s. But I think that's part of just getting older, isn't it? I just would have been a bit more longer term. And I think patience is quite a good thing to have, isn't it? And it's sort of weird how you get more patient as you get older. But actually, I told a joke in the office yesterday, which always makes me smile, which is that life is like a toilet roll, which is it goes faster as you get towards the end. But actually, weirdly, you get more patient, don't you? So you just don't worry about it so much.
So if you had to write or get someone to write your autobiography, what would the title be?
Well, I think we all have, it comes back to a mindset thing, right? In a way, we all have imposter syndrome, don't we? We all kind of are coming and playing a role, and you sometimes think one day someone's going to find me out, aren't they?
Life is but a stage.
Yeah, and it's true though, isn't it? You're acting a role, you just get better at it. And having brought up 4 children, which is the hardest work I've ever done, sometimes I'd go into like a room they were in, and I'd be really tired out, and I didn't have the energy or the knowledge to know what was happening, but I just knew there was something bad happening. And so my phrase was, right, who's been naughty now? That's what I always used to say. So it became, my children used to laugh at me all the time. I'd come through the door and they'd just go, who's being naughty now? So I'd probably call my biography, Who's Being Naughty Now, on the grounds that you don't always know what's going on, but you're sure there's something really naughty happening, don't you?
So how would you sum up your career journey so far?
I like the so far, Michelle. I appreciate that. Well, it's been 2 halves, really. You know, starting the first publishing company when I was about 23 or 24, growing that extremely quickly to be quite a large company, then hitting the dot-com crash, then bankrupting that company and starting again means effectively my professional career is in these 2 halves. And I think the honest truth is that means that if you look at it, had I been a little bit more skillful or conditions had been different, I'd probably be sitting in front of you 10 to 15 years ago with a similar situation. So I don't have any regrets over that, because actually it provided the opportunity for me to do this again and to not allow events and the world to dictate the shape of my career. So you decide what you're going to do and you just do it. I think the other part, to really understand what we're doing in Packt, it's really a piece of unfinished business for me professionally, but also an interesting journey to explore. what happens when you take a publishing company to be a technology platform and a subscription platform, which actually is a really interesting problem that many people have worked on, some people have solved in their own way. I find that super interesting. And also I'm really motivated and interested to keep learning. So now the quality of the organisation of Packt, the market we are in, all of us in the team, I recognise is honestly about 100 times better than anything I've done before. And so I feel good about that. So I look forward to the next 5 years and think, wow, I feel we're really well set up to keep all of us growing and learning as the future unfolds in front of us. So I think that's how I look at my career journey. I think one of the sort of final things I'd say is that when I was a really young man, my dad gave me the book about Steve Jobs, and it was really early on in Steve Jobs' career. So I must have been about 15 or 16. And the book was about how Steve Jobs was sort of had this kind of Buddhist world view. And the title of the book is a Buddhist mantra, which is "The journey is the reward." So exciting journeys are not about where you're going on the journey. You don't ever really get anywhere in life, ultimately. But you have to just make sure the journey that you're on, you feel as though each day and each week and each month is just good for you. And I think we can quite often focus too much on the end of the journey, where we're going to get to. And I don't know about you, but the end of every journey I've ever been on is really disappointing. And I realised that the journey was interesting. So I remember walking across England with my family about 10 to 12 years ago. We walked 200 miles all the way across England and got to the sea. And actually my youngest son was only 5. It was a really long and difficult walk. And we got to the sea and we all took our boots off and kept walking into the sea. And then we were all really sad because we'd spent 20 days walking, and that became the point, was just doing the walking. And we got there, it was really disappointing to end. And that's a good example of the journey is the reward, isn't it? The point wasn't getting to the end of the walk. The point was doing the walk. So to me, growing a company over the long term is just about the journey. Does it work for you every day? And don't think too hard about in the end where you're going, because I'm not always sure that you will always look back and think actually the journey was what was great about this.
And finally, what are the top concerns that keep you up at night about that?
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do, we compete with really big organisations with hundreds of millions of dollars of investor money in a global market to meet our customers' needs, which are really difficult to meet. When we're a relatively small organisation and a relatively small team, that's a kind of mad challenge. And so that's what makes it exciting. But thinking all the time, wow, is this... There's a difference between brave and mad, isn't there? And so making sure we're staying in brave and not in mad really is a good thing. And then there's the personal one, which is this appetite for all of us to keep stretching ourselves. And what worries me all the time is when companies stop growing because people stop growing. So the problem is when you stop growing, you tell yourself a story about how good I am now and why where I am is the place, like going to a beautiful valley and going, I don't want to stay on the journey anymore. But the problem is that as a human mindset, that can be very attractive, can't it? You can tell yourself a story about why this is the place to stop. And so I worry all the time about whether I'll get up one morning and think, I've arrived, which would be terrible because there is no arriving. So I don't know how to solve that problem other than just stay true to your values and keep moving on. Keep moving on. There's a great saying in Jewish culture, the Jews have been murdered and persecuted by Europeans for 2,000 years. And in Central Europe, really we murdered as Europeans. 95% of all Jews in the 20th century. And Central European Jews have one saying deep in their Yiddish culture, and they say, always keep your bags packed. So wherever you are, it might not be the place you'll always be. So always be ready to keep moving.